to the One to Another podcast. My name is Joanne. Today we're going to talk about habits of a joy-filled woman. Now listen, if you guys are listening, I think it's habits of a joy-filled person. And you know, there's a scripture in James that we probably all want to overlook. It says, "Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith-filled life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work. So you become mature, well-developed, not deficient in any way." Well, it is interesting. When tests and challenges come our way, we have to take a look at it as a sheer gift. Not often do we look at it as a sheer gift. It says, it continues in James, it says, "Don't let anyone under pressure to give in to evil. Say, God is trying to trip me up. God is impervious to evil and puts evil in no one's way. The temptation to give into evil comes from us and only us. We have no one to blame, but leering, seducing flare-up of our own lust. Lust gets pregnant and has a baby, sin. Sin grows up to adulthood and becomes a real killer. So my dear, very wonderful friends, don't get thrown off course. Every desirable and beneficial gift comes out of heaven. The gifts are rivers of light cascading down from the Father of light. There's nothing deceitful in God, nothing two-faced, nothing fickle. He brought us to life using the true word, showing us off as a crown of his creation." James 1:13-15. And another translation says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers." Doesn't say sisters, but that means brothers and sisters. "Whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything." So we got to take a look at what happens to us when we move into trials and temptations. According to James, we're supposed to consider it as pure joy. Joy, joy, joy. You know that song? I have the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. That's what we're supposed to consider it when we get into all these troubles and tribulations. Well, I don't know. I think it's something we have to learn, and I think that we have to have an attitude change, and we have to take a look at how we really look at joy. So good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brain. It is a healthy lifestyle. Habits like exercise, plenty of sleep, good nutrition were common components of happy people. Did you know that? Stable relationships, close relationships, are the strongest way to have happiness, more than anything else. Those who were most satisfied with relationships at 50 years old were the healthiest by 80 years old, according to Harvard researchers. He went on to say loneliness kills. It's as powerful as smoking or alcoholism. So having friendships, close relationships, help you have more joy in your life. But if we're going to have a lot of joy in our lives, I think we have to first of all look at fear. Before we talk any more about joy, let's look at the alternative to joy, which is fear. And fear can fill our brain, and it's not a pretty thing. Fear herds us into prison and shuts the door. Fear has taken 100-year lease on the building next door to your house and set up shop. Fear is oversized and rude. Unhealthy fear is unwilling to share the heart with happiness, and happiness complies and leaves. So here we are. We're going to be this person that we're going to have joy, joy, joy. And then guess what? Here comes fear. wants to live right next door to us to convince us in every way that they're going to destroy us with fear. Well, I read a story once about a man. He was an accomplished carpenter. He worked for a company that built houses. And he decided that this was the year that he and his wife were going to retire. He had a good retirement, and he felt like he had some years left to do some other things. He went to see the owner of the business and said, "We are going to retire. My wife and I feel like it's time, and so I want to give her my notice." Well, the owner of the company looked at him and thought, he said, "You've just been such an incredible master carpenter for me all these years. I do have a favor. I want to know if you'll build one more house." Well, the master carpenter looked at the man who owned the company and thought, "Okay, I guess I could build one more house and then I'm done. And then I'm going to retire." So he was given the plot of land and he was in charge of one more house. And as the weeks went by, he got less interested in building it. And so when it came to ordering supplies, he didn't buy the top quality ones that he always had in all of his other houses. He bought seconds, and he just didn't think that it was necessary to have the high quality that he always built in a house. And then his work became shoddy. He just lost interest. And when everything was supposed to be perfectly square and everything was supposed to be right on, no, he just didn't take the time to do that. Finally, the house was finished, and he was so thankful to get this house off of his assignment. And so he went to the owner of the company and said, "I have finished the house. I want you to know I'm done. I'm not going to build any more houses. This one's completed, and now I'm retiring." The man that owned the company was standing right next to him and said, "This was a great favor for you to build this last house for me. And I didn't tell you, but because you've been here for so many years and you've been such a great worker, master carpenter, I wanted you to build one more house for you." And he handed the master carpenter the key to his brand new house. Now, how do you think that master carpenter felt? Here he had been given assignment to build his last house. He wasn't excited about it. He didn't put top quality material in it. He did shoddy work, and now it belonged to him. Well, there's something that we can learn from that, and that is that we need to understand that when we decide that we're going to be joy-filled people, that there's always somebody come along that's going to try to distract us and try to help us not walk into the crafts that we already have in our lives. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what is joy, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about, again, this whole subject of, okay, what is it like when we have to face some of our fears when we know that this is our year to build the house that we're going to live in? I think that fear says, all is coming unraveled. Fear wonders if anyone is in control. Fear whispers this lie, God doesn't know what you need. Fear says you're on your own, it's you against the world, and fear wages a war on your faith, and fear forgets that God wins. And so if we understand that every time we're going to start walking in joy, this fear comes along to try to distract us. So what is joy? Joy is the twinkle in someone's eye, the smile from deep inside, the gladness that makes lovers run towards each other, the smile of a baby, the feeling of sheer delight that grows stronger as people who love each other lock eyes. What God feels when He makes His face shine over us, and the leap of our hearts when we hear the voice of someone we've been missing for a long time. Joy's awesome. It's a high energy feeling that you just can't wait to share with others. Joy gives us energy, hope, and ability to express our love. It brings us together and invigorates us to look forward to another day. It helps us endure hardships well. Joy gives us the strength to deal with emotional pain. It doesn't mean that we get past emotional pain quickly. It means that despite the emotional pain we have, we can still find relational joy in the midst of the hard stuff. Joy-filled people still grieve when they lose a loved one. The point is not that joy makes them immune to bad feelings. The point is that even in the midst of upsetting emotions, they can share joy with others, and joy gets them through hard times. Joy makes us healthier people. Well, when I was engaged to Ron before we got married, he lived in Estacada, and I lived in Portland, and I still had several patients in Estacada. And so I was driving to Estacada to go see one of my patients, and I called him on my cell phone and said, "Hi, Ron, where are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm on my way back to Estacada. I've been into Portland taking care of some errands, and I'm on my way back." I said, "Really, where are you?" And he told me exactly where he was, and I said, "Well, when you can get off to the side of the road, stop." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm about a half a mile behind you." And I said, "I just want you to stop, and I want to come in, and I just want to give you a big hug." And he says, "Well, I'll stop my car for a hug anytime." So he stopped his car, and maybe in 10 or 15 minutes, I was right behind him. He had a great big red truck, and I got out of my car, and I jumped into his truck, and I sat on his lap, and I gave him the biggest hug and kiss, and just said, "You know what? I love you, and I'm so thankful that we're going to get married, and I can't wait to be your wife." And he said, "Man, anytime you're coming to Estacada and you want to stop and give me a hug, I'm open." But that's what makes us healthy people, is when we are with other people and we can't wait to share the joy that we have for meeting them. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how to build habits of joy in your life. The first habit, I believe, is calming, learning to live in a quiet mind. Sometimes when the enemy comes in, this fear comes in, and our house is shaking because the fear is saying, working on a war in your faith, and our fear wants us to be unraveled and saying, God doesn't know what you need. That's when we need to say, calm down. Our body is a canvas to the brain. So noticing and quieting our body helps us reduce tension everywhere. And sometimes we just have to take a deep breath, and it just helps us get control of our bodies, and it helps us quiet our emotions. I have found that sometimes when we're just so needing to be calmed down, it sounds crazy, but how about just doing some jumping jacks? Or maybe doing something physical just to burn off the extra stuff that's going on inside of you, your body. Running in place, singing happy birthday to yourself makes you laugh. Breathing deeply while rubbing your arms and getting the tension out of your arms. Anything that you can do, it sounds crazy, but anything you can do to take a breather just to say, calm down. This too shall pass. We need to take a break, recognize our need for the rhythm in our life that says, I want to be a joyful person, but I have to calm down from the fear that's coursing through my body right now. And I think it's important to say to yourself, if you are feeling sad today about being on a diet where you can't eat sugar, and I really miss my ice cream, maybe you can just turn it around and say, you know what? I'm glad that even though I must avoid ice cream, I can talk on the phone to a friend, which will be meaningful. This time will make me feel better. So what happens in you when you're upset? What tends to get lost in your view of yourself during upsetting moments? Maybe we need to find somebody we can just talk to and vent and discuss what we're going through so we can calm down. I believe that what we learn in solitude is very important. Self-control or patience. Solitude gives us time and space to know ourselves. We give ourselves time to answer some question. Is this healthy for me? Will this nourish me? Is this good for me in the long run? We give ourselves the patience to answer these questions. We practice giving ourselves what we need before we expect it from someone else. So when you begin to have a trial, are you kind to yourself? Are you honest with yourself as you're going through it? Are you emotionally available to yourself? The more time you spend in solitude, the better you'll know how to answer these questions. People determine how to treat us in large by observing how we treat ourselves. The way you speak about yourself affects how people will speak to you. The way you allow yourself to be spoken to reinforces what people think you deserve. We learn who we are in solitude. Any step toward knowing yourself in solitude will help you love others. And I have found that to be true. One time, a long time ago, I was in a church they hired me to help with their women's ministries. And the minister took me into his office, and I was going to be there for 6 months, help them get their women's ministry started, a Bible study, and several different activities. And the minister said to me, I have an assignment for you. And he said, the assignment is that most of the women, and this was going to be just for women's ministry, most of the women look like they've just come out of their closet or they've just gotten out of bed and they don't look neat. They just are untidy, they're unkept, and there's something that they need to learn about good grooming. And your assignment is to somehow teach them how they really love themselves and to dress in a way that's clean and not sloppy. I've said, okay, I can do that. So every day I went to the church for 6 months. Every day I just dressed the way I always do. I was neat. I wasn't in any way flashy. I just wore clean clothes. My hair was always combed. And I looked nice. After the 6 months was over, the pastor brought me back for my exit interview and said, okay, how did you do it? I said, how did I do what? He said, I gave you an assignment that I wanted the women to look more like women and be clean and not so sloppy and stuff. I said, I never said a word. I just modeled what I believe a godly woman looks like. Well, he said, you did it. I said, well, thank you. But I did it by example, not by saying anything. And I believe that we have to learn how to love ourselves and learning to love ourselves is something that sometimes we do in solitude when we find the time to let God talk to us about how He loves us and how what He's placed in us is so beautiful that the way that we dress just is another reflection of who He is. I never spent a lot of money on my clothes, but they're clean and they're appropriate. And I think that sometimes we have to remember that people treat us the way that we treat ourselves. And so the second habit that I believe is important to develop as a joyful person is appreciation of gratitude. No matter how bad life gets, there's always something to appreciate. Appreciation be the most single habit of a joy-filled person. If we learn that we value joy, it begins to amplify what there is in life to appreciate. Just imagine planting your garden and then disregarding it. If we simply let it grow without any follow-up care, what will happen to this patch of land? The weeds will quickly take over and pull resources from the plants we want to see flourish. This is what can happen with the brain's attention system. Without training it to run on the fuel of joy, our brain will focus on fears. The weeds of fear will dominate our thoughts and sap all our strength and energy. Having something to look forward to helps give us the capacity to endure the hardships that often happen in between. We can relive past experiences that make us smile and brought us joy. Spending time in those memories is a great practice for developing the habit of appreciation. I believe it's very important that we learn how to count our blessings and appreciate the good things that we have in our lives. And counting our blessings is a great way to do that. Well, recently I decided to do something a little different in counting my blessings. I decided to make a list of what money can't buy. And so as I'm beginning to appreciate the fact that there's so much that I have to be grateful for, that I started my list, and I just keep writing. And I've written down, making a list of what money can't buy. Money can't buy a smile, clean air to breathe, holding hands with Ron, watching clouds, sunshine, rain, quiet moments before sunrise, giving a compliment, saying a prayer, doing something for someone without letting them know that you did it, rainbows in the sky, tears, singing to my favorite music, riding my bike, watching a sunset, quiet, rereading a favorite book, looking at the dish patterns, being frugal, enjoying the aroma of the first sip of tea, my signature, polishing shoes, devouring a book in one session, counting my blessings, winks, tulips pushing through rain-soaked soil, being clear-eyed, showing initiative, being respected for doing my own thing and recognized, swinging on a swing, walking early in the morning, seeing bright colors in posters, road daisies, being remembered long after holidays are over and not forgotten, seagulls swooping and scolding, hearing someone's heartbeat, 8 hours of sleep, the excitement of planning my 86th birthday party, being softly propped up in bed, having a sense of my own space, fog mist, handwriting, the hum of a freezer, relaxation and a chance to let down, lovely sounding words, age and beauty, loose strands of hair, wildflowers, pockets crammed with treasures, standing up straighter, snow. Well, my list goes on and on. And I'm going to continue working on this because I believe that appreciation and gratitude go together. And when I can find so many things for which I'm thankful that don't cost a cent, I find again and again how grateful I am. And then the next one is storytelling. A joy story explains how we face a negative emotion or experience in one of three ways. How we dealt with a hard emotion experience, but we still acted like ourselves. In other words, we made it through the experience and we just kept on going. How we dealt with a hard emotion experience, but we were able to recover and return to joy, but it took us a long time. We kept thinking about, this was story. I wish that I could have thought of a different way to tell the story. Or how we deal with a hard emotion and experience, but we learn a helpful lesson, even if we learned it the hard way. And learning it the hard way is sometimes the greatest lesson that we learn, so we never go around that lesson again. So, since Ron is in hospice, there's been a lot of changes that have been in our lives, and one of the changes that has been very acute for us is that we used to love to dance together. Dancing was one of our fun social well, it's just socially, we love to do it. And we went on 26 or 27 cruises. And on every cruise, Ron would always go and look for the best band and find the one that he felt was going to play the music we wanted to dance to. And so we would go to that place. And after we'd gone to the theater and done whatever, we would dance for quite a while. Now, you have to understand something about our dancing. We didn't dance to show off. There's always at least one couple on every dance floor that has the perfect shoes, the perfect outfit, and dance and want to take, they want to do center stage. That was not Ron and I. When we got on the dance floor, he was a wonderful dancer. And boy, he could dance. And so what we would do when we would dance is that we danced because we loved each other and sing. He was always singing as he was dancing, and it was just sheer joy for us. Well, now the time has come when we no longer can dance together. He no longer can wear shoes. His feet are so swollen that he can't ever put on a pair of shoes again. And so when I look at his shoes and I see and I realize that he's never ever going to be able to wear those shoes again, I realize that I have to be thankful, and I want to be thankful for letting go and saying goodbye to the fact that our dancing days are over. Well, our dancing days are over. But sometimes when he plays Elvira, that's one of his favorite songs to sing to, he and I will just take hands and we'll begin. And now, most of the time, lots of times he's in bed a lot. And so he just brings his arms and hands around and we just gently dance to the music. And I realize that I have said goodbye to my wonderful dancing partner who no longer can wear shoes. But in his heart, we still dance with our hands when we can, but we have wonderful memories to remember. And the habit of storytelling is so important when you're a joy-filled person because you do remember what you have had and you can tell a story about it. And as you can find somebody that will listen to your story, you can find that maybe someone will help you see your new perspective and then give you feedback on what you've heard and give you encouragement to keep on keeping on because the trials come. And there's a difference between trials and temptations. Trials, I believe, bring us closer to God. Temptations move us away from God. And so the third habit is storytelling. And the fourth habit is to attack toxic thoughts. I always say just ignore the committee in your head, because the committee is always going to tell you what you're doing isn't appropriate or you can't do that anymore. So we have to feed on thoughts that accompany our emotions. And sometimes our emotions are sadness, the feelings, what I've lost. Now I think about what I've had, and I can bring back the feelings of joy and be grateful for the fact that I have great memories. And I have learned that is sometimes we feel shame, the feeling I don't bring joy to you anymore and I don't see happiness. Shame tends to make me want to hang my head and avoid eye contact. And so when that attacks us from our joy, we have to say, you know what? I still have memories. I still have good things to remember. And I found that sometimes our thoughts make hopelessness creep in, such as unemployment is death. I'm doomed. There's no way out of this mess. I'm a failure. I have no future. Once you identify the most common thoughts that attack you, you've got to learn to make a replacement list, such as, and these are affirmations that I believe is true. The future is not written. Unexpected reversals for the good often happen. I can make a plan. I'm not alone. I can seek help. God loves me more than I can ever imagine. I can never travel beyond the reach of His great love. No matter what my sin, God forgives me if I repent, confess, and return to Him. There is nothing I can do that will cause God to turn away from me. Whatever I attempt to do, if it's God's will for me, He will give me the strength and wisdom I need to accomplish the task. If I seem to fail because circumstances are against me, God will always give me another opportunity if I just return to the starting point. That's Psalms 37:24. God never wants me to give up. Never, 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 never. Hating myself doesn't make God love me more. It just makes it harder for me to see His love. Psalms 103, 10-12. As Christians, God has wired us for joy, and He desires to share joy with us. Jesus said, I've told you these things so that my joy be in you and your joy may be complete. John 15:11. And then I believe that He wants to say in Numbers 6:24-26, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord lift up His face to you and give you peace. Your part is prayer and gratitude. God's part is peace and protection, imported from heaven, the same peace that marks the throne room God offers to you. Remember, God has already been to the end of your problem. His solution is coming. He will fill you with His peace while we wait for His answer. Today's promises. God hears me always, even over the noise of life, even when I don't use words to speak. Romans 8:26. God sees what I cannot see. He knows the perfect path for me. I can trust Him to lead me step by step through life's maze. Psalms 25, 4-5 in the Living Bible. God is near. He is working in my life. He will carry the weight of this load. 2 Corinthians 6:16. God knows me completely. His love for me is perfect. His friendship is mine forever. James 1:5. God is faithful. When I need His wisdom, it will be there. When I need His strength, it will be there. And when I need His presence, and when I need His presence, He will be there. He is enough for me. Psalms 23:1. God knows me personally. His presence is with me personally. He is bringing to my life reasons for joy personally. And so that song is really true. I have the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I have the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. So wherever you are, whatever you're walking through, just remember that we can, if we choose, to build a habit of joy in our lives. So I hope you'll take one more step towards healing. And I know if you will sense a lot of joy.